Word.
Oh, welcome to you. Is buyer confidence in WA property market still strong? I think it is, but there's been a few headlines, admittedly, not necessarily as it focus on WA, but we're going to have a look at that. We're going to have a chat. Welcome to Property Avenue WA, episode 73. I'm TV, he's Oscar D'Souza, and what we're all about, we just discuss, we review, we exchange opinions, we have a bit of a giggle, and we provide information associated with WA property matters. So this is your avenue to matters property in West Australia. Last week we had a bit of a chat and we looked at some really interesting figures that Oscar provided with regard to the Southwest, and also the rental market in Geraldton was in the 30s. So I'd be interested to know from Oscar where that's at this week. We're also going to have a bit of a change. We've had a bit of a chat. We don't often have a pre-meeting before we go on air. We just do it. But we're looking at the situation because of our busy lifestyles and everything else we've got. We think we might rejig this to allow us to provide a bit more information and allow us to do a bit more homework and switch from a weekly to fortnightly. So we're interested to get your thoughts on that, but that's where we're looking at heading. We do it fortnightly rather than weekly, and that will include our podcast and also our live stream. So our podcast available every Wednesday. And, of course, our live stream, you can get on our live chat line. You can send us a message via Instagram. You can send us a message on our Facebook page and Twitter. If you've got any questions, we would welcome that. OD, how are you, bud? Good to see you.
You too, TB. Yeah, mate, I'm really, really good. Just another big week in WA real estate, which we'll obviously get into some figures soon and talk about exactly where we are in WA. But yeah, life's good over here in COVID-free WA. And hasn't that started to really hot up as a topic, not so far as being COVID-free, but so far as reopening borders and welcoming international tourists and all that. So that really is a bit of a stranglehold in the media, and I guess WA's resistance or Mark McGowan's resistance to take the lead and follow in the footsteps of pretty much all the other states in terms of having the reopening plan. So I'm sure we can touch on that. But the other thing I'd say, TV, aside from WA real estate, is that whilst we're obviously doing this podcast, the live stream, and we firstly encourage all questions. So for anyone who's watching, if you've got any real estate questions at all about strata or about settlements or about buying or renting, please feel free to drop us a line. Any questions are more than welcome. In fact, we actually like dealing with live questions on the hop. But TV, when I'm looking at my head and your head on our TV screen, you normally make mention about the grey-haired little gentleman sitting on the screen. But the other thing that I noticed today is that our moustaches are they're getting pretty similar, actually. And that certainly wasn't part of our pre-show discussion.
Twins.
Yeah, but we're certainly heading in that direction. And as I quickly look across to my desk calendar, Movember is coming up in a few days, isn't it? And that's just a coincidence.
Oh, it is too. Yes.
Movember.
Maybe what we might do is try and reshape the Mo. We might just try and extend it a bit and do a few.
Get it to go down here, do you think?
Yeah, I reckon. And then I think we should try and sort of see if we can do a bit of fundraising. Do you know I've had my moustache since I was 21 years of age. 7, yeah. No, 21.
Have you had it since you were 21?
21, I've had a moustache.
You've never ever shaved it off?
Never shaved it off. And my family have never seen me without it. My kids don't want to know me without it. I've threatened I'm going to shave it off a few times. I went, nah. I've had an approach to do a fundraising quite a bit of money, and the family went, no, not happening.
So, what are they? Are they scared about what's under it?
Yeah, well, yeah, probably. They've never seen me without it. Simple as that. No, I've had.
So your wife's never seen you without it either.
No. I've always had it. Admittedly, it was a different color when she first met me. I look like the Mexican bandit when I first.
Definitely.
That's an interesting conversation. 5 minutes. Yeah. So there you go. But that's food for thought. With regard to the market, I've had some really interesting, and we'll talk about that shortly. But I've had some really interesting conversations and some really interesting inquiries from eastern states people. So you know how you were talking last week that you had a client that you were dealing with, from the East Coast, and they've asked you to assist them with buying a property. Same, and in one case similar to yourself, we probably there was a few things that we sort of identified and felt they need to be addressed, and the client made a decision based on that discussion that we had. And so I think in that sense, whether it be you or I or be it someone else, I think it's important, particularly if you're buying on the East Coast and you can't get here, unfortunately our borders won't allow us to do so, then it's important, as our disclaimer suggests, to get an independent professional advice and get someone that's going to assist you and provide the right direction, because you need to be a little careful in this market that you're buying what it is that you want to buy.
Yeah.
And I think you made the comment last week that photos aren't always photos are fine, but they don't necessarily give you the full picture.
Well, sometimes that
don't mind the pun on picture.
Yeah, sometimes that saying of a photo never lies, that sort of terminology. Well, sometimes, not often, but sometimes when it comes to real estate photos, sometimes I wouldn't go so far as saying lying, but they certainly embellish the truth. Is that the term?
Yep.
So, having a physical inspection, and that person that you mentioned, TV, that I'm dealing with in the eastern states, I'm still dealing with them because they've missed out on a couple of properties. There's another one that I'm going to have a look at them for tomorrow afternoon, and they are getting to that point now. And when I say missed out, they're getting outbidded or outbid. So people are paying more for the properties, and there's certainly, I can hear it, that there's that level of frustration that starts to creep in. And you just sit there and go, look, we've just got to get the next one. And that's when you start paying more. And it's not just you paying more, it's everyone else starting to get frustrated, and everyone starts to pay more. And hence we've got the situation that we've got, in that there's not enough properties, there's many buyers, and prices are definitely going up. There's no question about it.
What we'll do, we'll extend that conversation, because that's basically what our topic is tonight, our main topic tonight. But I think we probably should, without further ado, is make sure that we do our disclaimer. So our general advice disclaimer, the information on this podcast, because remember, our podcast comes out every Wednesday, so you can listen to the podcast rather than having to sit and watch what we're doing here. The information on this podcast is regarded as general advice. Your personal objectives, needs, and financial circumstances were not taken into account when preparing this content. I reckon I've got that right about 4 episodes in a row now. We always advise and recommend you seek personal, professional, and financial advice tailored to your specific individual needs before making financial, property, and investment decisions. And as we've just been discussing, super important that you get that proper advice to cover your circumstances, and independent advice is even just as important, because people are looking after you. I think before we, as we always do, I think we should do nothing further than go to this very, very important segment, OD stats. I'm interested to know, with regard to what figures you provided last week, and I'm sure there's others out there that do the same. I would like to know, where are we heading when it comes to the rental and the sales market, and has Geraldton improved?
Yeah, a couple of good questions there. So, in answer to them, where are we heading? We're heading to in the same direction that we've been heading for almost 18 months, and that is we don't have enough properties. We've got many people that need them, whether they're renters or whether they're buyers, and there's simply not enough stock, and hence there is that fear of missing out. All properties, rentals and sales are generally hotly contested. Prices are going up, days on market are coming down, and we're experiencing price growth. So, and I'm talking about WA. I'm not just talking about Perth. I'm talking about basically all of WA, and that's a stark contrast from that headline that you read me earlier, and that is that parts of the real estate market are becoming unaffordable and buyers are falling off a cliff. Basically, that's absolutely not. In fact, couldn't be further from the truth in terms of what's going on here in WA.
Yep, and that's why I thought it was a good topic to have tonight, because I think it's relative with what we're talking about, and it's relative even though we talk about a few other things which will raise later.
Yeah.
I think that's what we're saying with regard, because certainly this is where the confusion can be had when you pick up the paper and read a headline and go, whoa, and that's not quite the case when it comes to WA property.
Yeah, no, not at all. So, and we don't just have opinions on this TV. We back up what it is that we're saying via anecdotal evidence and statistics. So, looking at our statistics over the last 7 days, again, another week of more than 1,000 sales in Perth. So, 1,010 to be exact. That includes houses, units, and land all grouped together. So, in excess of 1,000 sales. This time 12 months ago, it was 898. So that's another 10 or 11% more sales than where we were at in the last week of October last year. And last week of October last year was really, really busy. We had this first spring selling season after the COVID period. So we really didn't know what was going to happen. And I think real estate agents were very pleasantly surprised as to how strong it was. And now, as I said, 10 to 11% more activity via transactions than where we were at this time last year. Stock. This is probably a bit of good news for buyers. The stock levels have actually increased a bit just in the last week. Last week, about this time last week, our stock level was around about 8,300, 8,350 available properties on the market here in WA. And as at today, it's 8,695. So it's actually a good thing that we're seeing a bit more variety for buyers. And we need our stock level to increase, not massively, but it's good to see a marginal increase over the week. This time last year, though, there was 10,371 properties on the market. So compared to now, that was 16% more properties on the market this time last year. So today we've got 16% less. And as I said, even though it's 16% less, it's a little bit more than it was last week. And at this point in time, that's actually a really good thing. We'll take whatever we can take. So, but I was talking to a real estate agent today who's a principal of one of the professionals office, one of the franchisees. And he said there's no question if 6 or 7 weeks ago, it was a little bit slow to start off this spring selling season. It's in full swing now, demonstrated by not just the buyers. Like the buyers are definitely out there and hunting, which is a great sign and probably nothing new. But there's a lot of genuine sellers out there as well that are looking to take advantage of the good market that we've got here in WA. So good news. It's actually some good news. So far as the rental market is concerned, I guess it can be seen as good news for landlords, but it's not good news at all for tenants because we just don't have enough supply, as I mentioned before. And even a bigger problem is that I don't know when that's going to change. I can't see why that's going to change. I can see if our borders open that our rental stock only gets less. But in terms of any time in the next 12 months, I can't really see why we're going to have an increase in the supply of rental housing. And that's a real problem because it's at a real dire strait level at the moment, statewide. And something needs to change, TB, because we're not talking about, oh, I can't buy that house. I'm missed out on that one. I'd love to buy the next one. We're talking about the basic human need, almost right, for housing and to have a roof over your head. And we're talking about homelessness. We've touched on that a number of times, but it's at a really, really bad level. And again, I can't really see any change in sight. So in the last 7 days, another 672 properties in Perth that have just been leased. This time 12 months ago in the same week, 790. So it's a bit less than where it was at 12 months ago. But again, that's not because the demand isn't there. It's because there isn't enough properties to lease. So that's why that number's a bit lower today than it was 12 months ago. The listings, the number of rental properties through Perth, 2,136. That's as low as I've ever seen it. So in my whole 25 years, I've never, ever seen a number so low. This time last year, it was 2,854. Just as a point of reference, around about 3,000 properties is a vacancy rate of about 1%. So if it's just under, as it was 12 months ago, just under 3,000, that's when our vacancy rate slipped to just under 1%. But as at today, there's only 2,136 properties available. So I'd suggest that our vacancy rate must be around about 0.6, maybe 0.7 of 1%. And that it's just way, way too low. We had a rental crisis going on this time last year. And we knew about that, and the state government knew about that. As at today, there's 25% less properties available than this time last year. So
really?
So if it was a rental crisis last year, we're that much worse off 12 months on. And again, I don't know where the solution is. I saw actually on the news, maybe social media, that there's a caravan park. I can't even remember what suburb, but probably through the Swan Valley or something like that. And there's a caravan park that for the next week that has said no to all tourists. They're not going to be accepting any tourists because they're going to 100% devote all their time and energy and focus on people that don't have a roof over their head. So basically the homeless. And I thought, what a fantastic initiative for people and business owners that are in a position to be able to do that. They can make great money from tourists, but they're choosing, at least for a week, to say no more tourists. I'm sure there are some tourists in there, but they're really opening up their park and accommodation to those that probably need it a lot more than tourists. So I thought that was what
if there's, what about the idea of a warehouse or large warehouses about that aren't about, what they did in Geraldton, they got when the cyclone went through, they got the basketball centre and they put beds in there.
Yeah.
I mean, surely there must be some initiative that someone can do that other than just talk about it. There's got to be, I don't know. I really don't know, but I'm just running this past any discussion because, but it's just, there
is, and I guess that would involve people finding their way to the warehouses wherever it's going to be, and then. But the condition, you've got a big, massive warehouse basically, and it's certainly possible, TB. I think it's probably more effort and more organisation to do that. Whereas if you've got something that's already built for accommodation and your regular customers, you basically, turn away for a period of time and accept other people that need a bed more than those tourists, and the accommodation's already set up, ready to go. I think that's it's a great thing for the generosity of humanity and for some West Australians that can do that. So really, really great thing to see. And finally, you touched on Geraldton in terms of has the Geraldton rental market improved in the last 7 days? The answer to that is no. As at today, there are 33 properties in the whole of Geraldton. So that's probably 7 or 8 times lower than where it needs to be to meet supply. Like 33. Wow. 33 in the whole of Geraldton, and not Geraldton, the suburb, but the entire Geraldton Greenock region, 33 properties. They've got a rental crisis just like anywhere else in the state, but I've never ever seen a number like that coming out of the Midwest. So not good news.
We've got one of our regulars and also been a guest, our Bendigo Community Bank manager in Geraldton. And he's come back to say that the Perth rental vacancies are about 2,136 more than Northampton.
Really?
There's not one available, as far as he knows, available for rent in Northampton, which is, for those that don't know where Northampton is, it's a small community north of Geraldton, about 35 k's north of Geraldton, and south of Kalbarri. They've got whacked badly from the cyclone Saroja, for those that may be aware of that. And interestingly, today, my princess was talking to, we had our little dog clipped, and she was talking to the lady there, and we had a haircut, and she was saying she'd been up to Kalbarri, and I don't know how recent this was, but she said it might be tough times when it come summer, because the power was going out quite regularly. Obviously, power supplies are still an issue there, so
right.
they found it somewhat frustrating. Weren't blaming anybody, but they just said, obviously still got some difficulties there. And JP's also said, you're talking about rental issues, and I'm sure he's not the only person that's been experiencing this, but he's helping some clients this week who are buying a house for their parents, who are looking at being homeless as their rented house is being sold, and they're in their mid-80s. So wow. I'm sure that is not the only such case of along those lines, not necessarily in the mid-80s, but wowee, that's a bit scary. That is,
yeah, really it is, mate. And it's these are people that most likely have done the right thing and throughout their lives and contributed to society and paid taxes and all that sort of stuff. And whether you're 50, 60 or 80 years old, I mean, it's just it absolutely is a crisis that I don't know that it could have been avoided, but I do think that there could have been a lot more state government acknowledgement of it over the course of last year, because I do know that the Real Estate Institute of WA, as an example, was making a lot of noise and trying to get the government to the table and some other key stakeholders to sit down and talk about what we can do. Now, I know the state government was obviously preoccupied as to working out what COVID means for our state. I totally understand that. But I don't know, get more people that you can, assign to housing. Bring more people in. It might cost the government another $500,000 in wages or something like that. But right now, the problem that we've got is it's going to cost a lot more than that to try and figure out what to do. And also, there's no immediate fix for it. Whatever the solution is, it's going to take some time. Meanwhile, the homeless population goes up, and our rental market just gets tougher and tougher. Imagine when they open the borders and we've got more people coming into the state internationally, but also interstate, and those people are going to need housing. And the Perth metropolitan area is as bad as regional. Last week we touched on some southwest numbers, and I remember Augusta had 0, Margaret River had 0, Dunsborough had a couple, Busselton had a handful, but regional WA is really struggling with this as well, and we need a solution. And I really feel that the government needs to take the lead. I mean, you even watch the news at the moment. There's not really a whole lot of reference to it, except for the occasional, and it's a sad story, but, the occasional renter that's applied for 24 different properties and hasn't been successful. Like, we're hearing from the tenants that that can't find themselves a rental, but we're not hearing much from the government I guess, that can take more of a lead than what they have done so far.
Mate, I've got my headphones on, as you can see, and I can still hear that rain that's pelting down outside. Have you got rain in your place? It is pelting down.
I don't think so. No, not right now. So I'm in
Wow.
Coburn.
Yeah, it is pelting down. As I said, I've got my headphones on and I can hear that rain loud and clear. So it's belting down here, which is really interesting. Yeah, no, getting back to what you were talking about, I think the other thing that is of concern is that we've got a vibrant economy. We have got the farming. Well, as long as this rain stops, the farmers are heading towards a record season in a lot of areas. They require staff. They're struggling to get people. And, of course, when we do allow our interstate friends and, for that matter, international people come into our state, where are they going to go when we all of a sudden, employers want staff, but they've got nowhere to house them? That's another issue in itself that I think is a huge concern.
I just saw very briefly, I saw on the news tonight, there was a flight from Perth to Adelaide, a Qantas flight. I don't know if you saw that.
No.
Just overnight, I think, from Perth to Adelaide, but then they possibly could have had an engine problem, so they had to divert to Kalgoorlie. They landed in Kalgoorlie. In the end, there's no problem with the plane, but they had 300 passengers that they couldn't do anything with because Kalgoorlie is got its own little boom going on, not just in permanent residential accommodation, but I don't think it's very easy to get a hotel or a motel bed over there, and they literally had nowhere to put these people. So I think they had to hang out at the airport and on the tarmac and then got flown back to Perth.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. It's I know probably the best part of 40 or 50 episodes ago when we were talking about what was going on, we actually called it, I think we did a headline to say property boom or property crisis. We called it property crisis. And I think within a couple of weeks, I'm not claiming that we were the experts, but the fact is, I think there was an article or a headline in the papers talking about a crisis with our property market, and that hasn't changed. In fact, that's, as your statistics indicate, that's got worse when it comes to the rental side, which gets me back to our topic for the night. Our headline tonight is buyer confidence in WA property market still strong, and we've already touched on that. And as you've highlighted, talking to one of the principals of one of the real estate firms, that the spring season is always a bumper, and we're well and truly into that bumper season. What's your call? The headline where I created our headline was that one of the papers said housing affordability collapses despite record low interest rates. Now, when you read further, that soaring prices and stagnant wages are combining to drive down affordability in the nation's two largest cities. And of course, there is now a situation where the banks, they are trying to, they've already, ANZ have now joined CBA and Westpac, and they've now increased their 2, 3, 4 and 5 year fixed rates. And I think they've increased them by something like 0.3 or 0.35%.
Wow.
Trying to slow things down a little. Now, back in June, I know I went and checked back. In June, ANZ up their rates for their 4 and 5 year rate was increased. This is fixed. They increased it by 0.45%. So the banks are trying to do something about it, but there's also, as our friend Dino said, the APRA is already introducing, will kick in November. The increase of the assessment rate will occur as of November. Now, that's across the board, and that's going to have an impact on people when they go to borrow money to buy a home, whether you're in WA or whether you're in the eastern states. So the affordability situation, that's, from my observation just in the last few days alone, and you made mention of this last week, but I've had clients touch base with me from the East Coast looking to buy in WA. And obviously affordability, but certainly there seems to be no slowdown with buyer confidence here in WA.
No, mate. I mean, I'd call BS. Absolutely call BS on that headline so far as it applying to WA. And literally, I do think it's BS because it's the complete opposite. I mean, I think WA is probably the most attractive state in terms of prices. And obviously we get the same interest rates. So no, mate, there's nothing at all suggesting that buyers aren't interested in our market. We probably need to drill down a bit further or pull that apart and look at the different segments of buyers, because we've got owner occupiers and then we've got investors, some people that are just purely speculators. Sorry, it's off.
You're there. I've got you.
Yeah, sorry, something popped up on my screen. So we need to pull it apart a bit, and we know that the owner occupiers is super strong. We know that first home buyers is also very, very strong, and maybe there is a bit more pressure on them because properties in their price segment are highly contested and go very quickly, and those prices have started to go up. So yeah, they might be under a little bit of pressure. And from an investor's point of view, look, investor interest in WA has been increasing over the year. It's nowhere near at the level that I would have thought it would have been at by now, given the prices, given the interest rates, and given the rental market that we've got. But I really do think, I mean, we're practically at the end of the year. I'd expect a very, very strong year next year in terms of investor interest or continued investor interest. So, but all areas over there, like none of those areas are no interest from owner occupiers or investors. It's strong across the board. Some areas are a bit stronger than the other. But TV, just going back one step, because you mentioned APRA and you mentioned what the large banks are doing of their own accord in order to either slow the amount of borrowing or factor in the risks that need to be factored into their borrowing. And it's a bit of an unusual situation because back in my studying days and certainly my earlier career years, interest rates were certainly something that the Reserve Bank used more, or so I thought, to control and have an impact or an influence on the market for borrowing, and particularly for home borrowing and home investment. But they've said that we're not expecting rate rises anytime till 2024, I think. And then a lot of commentators have suggested it's going to be probably 2023, if not at the end of 2022. But the RBA seems pretty firm that no, it's still going to be 2024. And meanwhile, in the background, we've seen the banks go ahead of their own accord and start increasing interest rates a couple of times this year. And then also APRA tightening up the criteria for lending and serviceability. So I don't really know the connection between the RBA and APRA, but there are things that are happening that will probably slow the amount of lending, but it's not the RBA that seems to be forcing their hand.
Someone that should know has made the comment, don't be fooled. Banks putting up fixed rates to call back some net interest margin.
Right, okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And
okay. So
it's in response to that too, Dino, who's a regular, Dean Stonehouse, who's a regular, been a regular guest of ours and a highly regarded and respected finance broker and a banking background, he advised that the cost of funds have already gone up when it comes to the banks, and that's what it's all about. At the end of the day, that has a lot to do with it. And of course, they've already, the lenders are already sort of under pressure to increase their rates because of the fact of what's going for the cost of funds, and that's an influence. But the APRA situation, basically, where did I read before where the Reserve had sort of said, well, it's up to the powers to be to control lending and do responsible lending. And responsible lending, at the end of the day, that's what APRA is all about.
Yeah. Well, that's just in terms of responsible lending. I was watching something on the news tonight, and they were talking about the report that's just been released in to do with Crown Melbourne, and they were talking about the concept of responsible gambling or gamble responsibly, and the fact that when they use that term, they're saying gamble responsibly and putting all the onus on the gambler. Or rather the responsibility on the gambler, and therefore not taking any responsibility for the environment that they're creating, and in fact the pokie machines themselves. And those pokie machines are actually built to be addictive, and so you can't put all the responsibility on the person sitting at the pokie machine. Like the organisation needs to take some and a lot of responsibility. So I probably digressed a bit there, mate, but it's responsible lending and responsible gambling. Maybe it's the same thing.
Yeah, look, it is. And again, Dino's made mention, assessment margin is increasing from 2.5 to 3%. Therefore, borrowing capacity will reduce. And that's the other issue, that all of a sudden, although your interest rate is X amount, when the banks make their assessment of your loan application, they'll be assessing it on 3%, not 2.5%, if you know what I mean. So,
I think, well, they might be doing that, but I think from what we covered with Dino as well, if the interest rate's 2.5%, they'd add 3% on top of that to have a look at what your serviceability would be if interest rates were to increase over whatever period of time. So it's a bit of a scenario risk analysis.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, though. That assessment margin is going up from 2.5 to 3%, not interest rate. Not interest rate, but the assessment margin is increasing from 2.5 to 3%.
Yeah.
So that's not the interest rate that's increasing. That's the assessment margin they use on top of the interest rate to assess your loan application. Yeah, and I've had many a client that say to me, or when I say client, many a person say to me, oh, I've got this and I've got that, and I can't believe that they won't approve my loan. So it's not about what you've got. It's your ability to repay.
Yeah. But I think, the Sydney and Melbourne property markets, the bits that I do see on social media or the news, it's just out of control over there. And I'm pretty certain as well that wage growth doesn't move anywhere near at the same rate as what their real estate markets move.
No, well, that's the other thing. That's exactly what they're talking about. The wage market, exactly that. There's been slower wage growth, and of course, there's a massive increase in home prices, and of course, that ratio to your loan repayments and commitments to your income is major. Mate, our man in Geraldton, he's just all over it tonight. The other big measure from the Bendigo Community Bank manager he's alive tonight. The other big measure from APRA at the moment is a change to living expenses. Less discretion on additional expenses, which I've seen an example where borrowing capacity of clients reduced by nearly 300,000.
Wow. That's massive.
That's huge. That is huge. I think we need to get him on as a guest. I think just being this comments man in the background, I don't think that's good enough. I think we need him back on deck. And
just going back to
that's huge, though, isn't it? Additional expenses, which he's seen an example where borrowing capacity of clients reduced by nearly $300,000. That's a big call.
Yeah, so I guess what it's saying is the serviceability, because there's so much discretionary spending on whatever, alcohol or takeaway or sport or gym memberships, it can be on whatever discretionary spending, therefore is not disposable income that can be used towards debt servicing. So therefore it reduces the amount that you can borrow because you spend too much on discretionary stuff that the bank doesn't feel that you need to spend money on.
Yep. No, it's a very interesting scenario, and I suppose we probably try and broaden. We've had a couple of finance people on, but it's all relative. But it's when we get back to buyer confidence, it doesn't seem to change anything with regard to people's enthusiasm here in WA to buy property. And to give you also a further extension of that, I've had a couple of clients, in fact, several clients, who are selling their property privately, and they've asked for my assistance with preparing contracts, etc. And in the space of a few days, their property's gone on the market, and within the space of a few days, bang. And so they've been put in at the, what I consider the right price, and there's been no shortage of enthusiasm with regard to that side of the market as well. And then, of course, as we both know, with the real estate agents and their listings, I don't think they can get enough to keep up with demand. It's quite obvious, isn't it? That's in WA. And you would say that that's the same in WA, both Perth and regional WA. And regional WA is both north of Perth and south of Perth and east of Perth. And as you mentioned, Kalgoorlie, we haven't touched on that. Perhaps we try and find out a little bit more about Kalgoorlie, but I'm sure things are no different over there than it is everywhere else that we're talking about.
Yeah, in fact, I know a really good real estate person in Kalgoorlie, and now that I'm thinking, I'm doing some work with their office, some property management consultancy work. But aside from that, I'm sure that she'd love to jump on the show and share a bit with us as to what dominates play in Kalgoorlie at the moment and what challenges have they got. So,
how about I've already taken a note of that, and I'm going to request some heavy lifting by one Oscar de Souza. And how about if we try and arrange for that appointment would be as a guest maybe in 2 weeks' time?
Can do. So long as you remind me.
No, I've written it on my little whiteboard now. Kalgoorlie, there it is. Kalgoorlie, OD, heavy lifting. HL.
Yeah, so the Kalgoorlie property market, that can be the topic in 2 weeks' time. That'd be great.
I think it'd be good to get a bit of exposure to what's happening over that way, and they'd probably also be aware of what's going there and further there, like the smaller communities in within that vicinity. So that would be sensational. So let's look forward to that. We'll see if we can do that. The other thing that I was intrigued about was. What was it? Oh, getting back to your rental issues that you were talking about. Did you see, and maybe this should be a headline rather than a topic of discussion. Now, I'll keep it for our property headlines, but it's about a rental, and it was a very unique little situation where, let's do it. So there was a guy who was in the paper, while it's hot to trot. So there was a guy there where he had this little, did you see the little shanty that he had? It was like the back of a ute that was sitting on the ground like a cabin type thing. And he advertised $60 a week for rent, and he got inundated. And then he decided to take it off because the people that were wanting to rent, they were assuming that they would be able to use his toilet and shower facilities in his house. So he had this idea of renting this space out, and was just basically like those cabins that sit on the back of a ute or a four-wheel drive, whatever you call it. It looked a bit like that. It was in the West Australian, I think. It was in one of the real estate sections or something like that. And from what I understand, he or she who thought it was a good idea suddenly thought this is not quite a good idea because the interest that was shown, there's no shortage of interest, $60 a week, but there was a problem, and that was the fact that the assumption was people would be traipsing in and out of his own home for toilet and shower facilities. So that's how desperate people are, though. That just highlights how desperate, people are. I'm sure if you put a tent in your backyard and you advertise it for rent, there'd probably be people that take you up on it.
Well, it's absolutely the case, and this is real life stories at the moment of family members, whether older or younger, either they can't find a rental property or they've sold their own home and haven't bought their next home yet. So, if you drive around the suburbs, and see a camper van open on someone's front lawn, or a caravan parked in the back or whatever, and looks like someone's living in there, or even a tent, you wouldn't look twice at the moment, because it's very, very real. That's what some people are actually forced to do. So, and it's not good TV. It's really a humanitarian crisis so far as WA is concerned, and I really think that we'll be saying the same thing early next year, and for a lot of next year, because I just can't see why it is actually going to change. In fact, it's probably going to get worse if our local economy continues to be as strong as what it is. The demand for workers is high, therefore the demand for housing is high. The borders will open at some point in time. That's not going to be a mass exodus from WA. It's probably going to be a mass influx into WA, and things go from really, really hard to even harder. So I don't know. Hopefully, I'd really love to hear more about it from the state government. And they're talking about borders opening, but there's going to be more people coming, and I really think, even though it's a bit late, they still need to take the lead and come up with a solution.
I've just let our passionate follower, one JB, let him know that we've now nominated him as our special comments person, I think, with his enthusiasm. So at the end of the day, what we've assessed here is that buyer confidence is definitely not going away when it comes to WA property. And we're not talking just Perth, but we're talking about the regions. And certainly when you look at a situation like Geraldton, where there's, 33 properties in the whole of Geraldton, which is probably 7 or 8 times lower than it needs to be. You talk about employment. You talk about a region that is, it's got a strong fishing industry. It's got a strong agricultural industry. It's sort of supportive to the mining industry, and it's got areas outside that region that is strong in the mining sector. So when you've got a region or a major regional centre that is struggling when it comes to rental, then there shouldn't be any there shouldn't be a downside when it comes to buyer confidence. In quite the opposite, that there is opportunity if there's opportunity to buy, and you want to buy for investment, these locations if you're looking outside Perth, they would be obvious locations, because you won't have a problem. Which gets me to another point. How is that impacting? Is there still some craziness going on out there? And because you're in the property management game, is there still some craziness going out there with regards to the rental affordability? Are people being greedy, or are people just being damn sensible?
I don't. They're definitely not being greedy. Oh, you mean landlords?
Yes.
No, mate, from everything that I see, and I had a conversation with a landlord yesterday where they've got a rental, and the tenant's currently paying $480 a week. But this rental, I've just taken on the management, this rental's easily worth $100 a week more. And instead of, every landlord that I've dealt with, instead of just whacking up the rent $100 a week, the intention is to go back and have a chat to the tenant and say, look, you're paying $480. Everyone knows that it's worth more. This is the evidence. This is what it would rent in the current market for. However, you've been a great tenant. We want to keep you in there. You've done the right thing by us. So let's step it up from $480 to $525 for the first 6 months, and then $550 for the next 6 months. So we'll work with you on it. And every single time, that's been the position of the landlord in terms of being reasonable. And every single time the tenant has appreciated that and has worked with us as well. So most of the time, I think you'll actually get a really happy outcome for both the landlord and the tenant. You do occasionally see on the news stories contrary to that, but that's not the dominant side. The dominant side is certainly being reasonable from both the tenants and the landlord side.
That's a good thing then, I suppose, because that people are being understanding, and certainly
definitely, mate. Yeah,
I'm a bit the same way, where we've got a property in similar circumstances, but we're just being sensible, I suppose.
Yeah.
Got good tenants. Why be silly about it? You know.
Yeah.
So and I've certainly
And
spoken to a few other people along similar lines, but it was interesting because you've got your feet on the ground when it comes to that stuff.
yeah, and I have to be honest with you, TV. I just wouldn't want to deal with and would shy away from dealing with landlords that would deal in an unfair or an insensible manner. What are you laughing at?
He's come back and said, "All good, gents. Happy to carry your show occasionally." I mean, seriously.
Yeah, that's the truth. Yeah, but no, I would just pretty much say no to the business. If I had a landlord that was just not being human about it and being really, really unreasonable, I honestly would be happy to just. And if they weren't listening to me and in terms of at least hearing my advice, they don't have to go with it every time. But in terms of at least hearing it, I would rather say no to the business if someone's not doing the right thing by the tenant.
I think what we'll do, just looking at the time, we've sort of gone a little bit beyond what I was planning on. But I've got a quick.
Really?
We'll go to our segment, Discover the Answers, and I've got a quick question that has been brought to me today, and we'll. Discover the Answers. Now, this is a section that I don't think we've done it the last couple of episodes because we've been so busy with everything else, but this is a segment we would love you to send through your questions, be it during the week or on our live chat line when we do live stream, or via Instagram or via what else we got? Twitter, Facebook, whatever the case may be, Messenger. If you've got a property question, whether you be an Eastern States person, because the process here in WA is very, very different. But I had a client ask me on the weekend with regard to the situation that they were buying a property and they said, what's the story with deep sewage here in WA? Because they heard differently. And when I sort of said, well, expand on that, because there's a lot of stories about deep sewage. The situation being is that what people don't realise here in Western Australia is that Oscar de Souza has a property. Oscar de Souza is in some, so this is probably more so in regional areas that are on septic tanks and being now converted to deep sewer rather than the metropolitan area. However, it's something you need to be aware of, and particularly if you're, well, not just Eastern States buyers, but if you're buying a property, you need to be conscious of this before you sign a contract. And what I'm coming from is the fact that if you buy a property, or you plan to buy a property, check with the agent. If they don't already know, you need to check it. Now, check it with the settlement agent or whoever you may be. Is that property connected to sewer? And if the property is not connected to sewer and Oscar de Souza owns that property, one of the anomalies with the whole process is that Oscar de Souza can receive a notice from the Water Corporation instructing Oscar de Souza to connect. The deep sewer is now available, and there's an instruction from the Water Corp to connect to deep sewer. And I think you've got 24 months to do so. However, there's no follow-up process with that. And so if Oscar de Souza ignores that instruction and then sells the property to Tony Viner, right, the minute that I sign an offer to buy your property, Tony Viner becomes automatically responsible for the connection of that deep sewer, and I receive a notice for a limited period of time once the property is transferred to my name to have that deep sewer connected. Now, sometimes in some areas, and let's say limestone, etc., is a factor, suddenly that connection could be something that you haven't catered for, and that could be something like $15,000, $20,000 to connect. So if you're going to buy a property, and this question was asked of me the other day, if you're buying a property, they were quite, and we've had clients who have been quite put out that they signed a contract, then we bring it to their attention in the settlement process to say, hey, this property is not connected to deep sewer, and you'll need to connect it once the property becomes yours. It creates a fair bit of angst, as you can well imagine. So if you're buying a property, particularly regional WA, one of those factors that I'd be checking before you sign any contract is clarifying and getting your real estate agent to confirm with you whether it is or it isn't connected. And if it's not, or if there's any uncertainty, I would recommend you don't sign a contract until you get that properly confirmed. Otherwise, you could be up for some extensive pennies that you've perhaps not budgeted for and planned for.
Yeah, it's a really valid point, but TB, and from a property valuation point of view, for bank valuers that go out there and do valuations, they have to. It's one of the things that they do need to check for that very reason, because it can actually impact on. Well, it can impact on the value of the property, because at the end of the day, nothing materially looks different with the property, but for the fact that it has to be connected to deep sewer at some point, and it can be a very sizable cost. But also the bank needs to know about it, because the bank is lending money to the buyer for the property, probably on the assumption that it is connected to sewer. And if not, that 15 or 20 grand has to come from somewhere. If the buyer doesn't have it, then it's, almost becomes the bank's problem. So they need to know about it. So yeah, really, really important thing. Generally properties are going to be connected to deep sewer where it's available, but never, ever take it for granted. It's worth a quick check.
It is when you look at the general conditions of that are associated, joint form of general conditions that are associated with the contract. And it's certainly a very valid question, and certainly something that we have seen firsthand. It's put a lot of pressure and created a lot of anxiety for clients that have for doing that.
TV, are we doing what's on the notice board tonight?
I know what you're waiting for. How good does it get? What's on the notice board? If you're wondering what's on the notice board, this is your segment where you might have a birthday, you might have something quirky, you might be doing, what did we say? Movember next month? Well, then watch this space. We might take some photos of our mows. And are we going to do it? Are we going to do something with our mows for Movember?
I think so. Let's do it.
I think we should. I think Property Avenue WA, we will try and do a fundraiser and try and do something for Movember. I think it's a bit of a...
Maybe the Geraldton Community Bank would like to, throw some money at the cause.
I think so. I think we'll put that to the... I know the manager there, so we'll see what he thinks. But I can tell you that what's on the notice board, I can tell you, it's my eldest son's birthday today. So, Marky, Sparky, happy birthday, mate. I won't tell you how old he is, but he's creeping up there. He's older than you, mate, so that's a worry. So it's his birthday today. So Sparky's our eldest boy, and we wish him well. He was going out with his girls tonight for dinner, and we're going to catch up with him tomorrow. And our regular guest, one Dean Stonehouse, is always on the ball and provides some invaluable information. It was his birthday on the weekend, so Dino, happy birthday. I did send him a message from the two of us, and wished him well. So that's his birthday.
How old is Dino?
Dino would be in his 50s. He's probably more than that. He's probably in his 70s, really. But yeah,
he doesn't look like he's in his 70s.
No. Well, you never know. Anyway, so here was his birthday. So happy birthday, Dino. And the other thing that I found, this is on a sad note. Did you just before we started our broadcast? I got brought to my attention that Russell Wolf from ABC. I don't know whether you listen to ABC Radio, but I do. I can't believe that. That's just so sad.
Yeah, it's so sad. It's been a massive shock to the system. I didn't listen to ABC Radio, but I knew he was on there, and I used to watch him a bit on the weather report, the news.
Yeah.
And his early 50s, 52 or 53, I think.
I don't think he's even that, mate. I don't think he's even that.
No, he was. It was early 50s.
Righto. Yeah, but whatever it is,
but,
it's
not
very
very
old.
young as anything, TV.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's not nice and not good. And so the ABC people and the ABC family, as I said, we wish them well. But on a more brighter note, today in the United States is National Pumpkin Day. National Pumpkin Day in the United States today. And not only that, and I celebrated this day yesterday. It was World Pasta Day yesterday. So I had a big homemade spaghetti last night. Beautiful. well past the day. And tomorrow, just to help you, tomorrow is National Black Cat Day.
Black Cat Day.
Black Cat Day tomorrow.
Yeah,
National
will
Black
really,
Cat Day.
that will really help me. Hey, TV.
Yes, mate.
What was I going to say? Mate, have you worked out which loon bag is actually making up all these world national days, or is it you? Are you just making crap up, or like,
no? These are genuine.
Where's all this stuff coming from?
Different countries have all these amazing days, and look, and I can
World
tell you
Black
on
Cat Day.
I can tell, and I can tell you I can tell you on October the 21st, so last Thursday, it was National Get Smart About Credit Card Day.
Oh, God.
That was the same day as Get to Know Your Customer Day. Remember I told you about that? So,
yeah, I do.
Yeah.
But I think that these days, all these different days and all, like, people are just making stuff up now just to have some sort of a voice. It's a bit like the horoscopes.
Oh, well, look, don't get sort of make it. Enjoy it, mate.
It is, mate. It's they're making a mockery of this, and someone just says, "Oh, let's have it's National World Black Cat Day," and suddenly everyone's going to go out and buy a black cat or try and run one over or something like that.
You've been a bit sooky. You've been very sooky. I mean, what's on the Noticeboard? We're looking for quirky, a bit of fun things, and a little sooky la la.
Just had enough TV. I've had enough of the BS.
Oh, please get on with it and accept there's a bit of fun in the world. Talking about fun, I think we've done our dash for the night. Don't forget, tomorrow our podcast will be available. So rather than watch us, you can listen to us. And please share that out and let people know we're trying to. And if you've got a topic you want to talk about, or something you'd like us to discuss, or there's a specific thing that you want to know, or a specific let's say a guest associated with insurance, then we've got a few guests we've got to follow up on. Let us know.
Or if you've got a national day or a world day that you want to have next week, and you'd like us to just say that it's World Vanessa Day or something, then we'll do that.
Oh, gee whiz. You're such a boring old fart. And you're not even my age. Okay, so let's finish up with our favourite segment, other than what's on the Noticeboard, which you're obviously not enjoying that anymore. Let's do the if question. Dearie me. If people see the podcast, they'd go, although you can't see us on the podcast, but anyway, we're bouncing around, having a good time. Okay, so I created this if question, and it's spring, all right? And if you were going to show your little girls, your daughters, your green finger skills, if you were going to do that and you were going to grow some vegetables or some herbs in your garden for summer, what would you grow? What would be the 4 herbs or veggies that you reckon you'd like to grow for your garden?
Where the hell did you come up with that question?
I just thought, well, I was planning what I'm going to grow, because I grow my herbs and a few veggies during the spring and the summer season. And I thought that's a question I'll ask him, because I know he'll get annoyed about that. He got annoyed about what's on the Noticeboard. So come on, Suki Lala.
I'm not much of a herb and plant and green thumb and spice grower or whatever.
I didn't say go and do it. I said it's an if question, okay? I didn't say ask you when I asked the question about going to the moon. I didn't say you were going to the moon. I said if you were going to the moon. Now, if you were going to grow some veggies.
If I was going to, well, I'm not sure that this is the appropriate forum to tell you what I'd grow.
That's not a veggie.
It is if you eat it.
I'll tell you a story. I'll tell you a funny story. Okay, so my if question, I'd be growing. My plan is I'm going to be growing some basil. I'm going to put some new cherry tomatoes in, and I'm going to put in some coriander. I'm planning to do some coriander, and I love corn.
Mate, that is unbelievable. That is the exact 4 that I would have done myself.
But I'll tell you a little story before we finish up. There was a long, long time ago when we were in our teens or early 20s, and my dear mum came to our unit, or my unit, my brother was living in, and she checked the freezer and she thought she'd go and try these muffins, but there was a mad panic about these muffins because the ingredients in those muffins probably wasn't the sort of thing that my mother was expecting. So there was a mad panic by my brother, who had to quickly tell mum that those muffins, mum, are no good, and they're in the freezer because I'm waiting to throw them in the bin. She said, "Oh, darling, I'll put them in the bin for you." She said, No, don't put them in the bin. So it was a very funny situation.
Beautiful.
Let's just say those muffins, poor old mum, she didn't get to try them, but it was quite funny. Hello, Jody Bevan, JB's gone, spuds, carrots, peas, and basil. Good on you. I'm with him. I don't know about the spuds. Need a bit of ground for the spuds.
Yeah,
anyway,
Tony Gallardi.
Hey, listen, thanks a million. Been a great, another great segment. I'll let you know, and we'll let everybody know. But I think at this stage, we will rejig ourselves to do. We won't be on next week. We will organise ourselves to be in a fortnight's time and make it a fortnightly episode for here. If you think otherwise, by all means, we're open to suggestions. But and Judy Vine has gone broccoli.
Oh, really?
Broccoli.
Well,
Yeah.
That means you're going to have to drop the cherry tomatoes, mate, and do broccoli.
No. I can do cherry tomatoes and the broccoli. No problem.
Hey, do you know what? Next Tuesday, mate, it's World Broccoli Day.
Mate, we've got to go. Got to go. Been a pleasure. Really enjoyed it. Thank you for your input, and as always enjoy it. But for those that are listening, those that listen to our podcast, please share, please let people know. And if you've got a topic, we'll try and get our guest. We're going to get Oscar to do some heavy lifting and get a guest from
Kalgoorlie.
And it's just been brought to my attention, next Tuesday, so it's probably a good move, next Tuesday is Melbourne Cup Day. So we should have had that on the notice board. Yeah,
well, if we were organised, we would have. But it's also National Horse Day.
Mate, got to go. You're being a fool now. We're extending our season. But see you next week. Thanks a million. To get us on our podcast. Enjoy. Got to go.